I poured coffee into my mug and offered refills to Douglas and Leona across the dining room table. Sunday lunch was over, and the afternoon light streamed into the home at 2847 Maple Street. I felt good, even optimistic. "I wanted you both to know first," I said, leaning back. "I'm retiring next month. My pension will be $2,400 monthly." Douglas nodded, but Leona immediately set down her fork. Something shifted between them, making my coffee taste bitter. "That's actually perfect timing," Leona announced, her voice precise. "We've been meaning to discuss your rent. Starting April, you'll pay $1,200 monthly." The words hung in the air. I waited for my son to intervene, but he avoided my eyes, picking at his food. "Rent?" I kept my voice steady. "I'm family. This is our house, Sylvester," Leona stated, pushing a printed spreadsheet toward me. It itemized every charge: room rental, utilities, food, shared space usage. $1,200 is half of everything you've earned over 43 years of engineering work. Douglas finally spoke, still not looking at me. "Dad, we have expenses, a mortgage, bills. It's only fair you contribute." I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. I didn't yell or slam anything, I just looked at them. Douglas refused to meet my gaze, and Leona watched me like a cold businesswoman closing a deal. "Interesting," I said flatly. "Very interesting indeed." I walked toward the stairs, ignoring Leona's demand for the first payment by April $text $1 St. In my bedroom, I locked the door and retrieved a cardboard box from the closet, labeled House Documents 2010. Spread across my bed were the documents that revealed their betrayal. A cashier's check for $340,000 with my signature. Closing documents from March 2010 listing me as the buyer. The deed transfer paperwork listing Douglas Bell as the title holder. My handwritten note explaining that the gift was for my son's future, so he starts ahead of where I did. I realized the mortgage they complained about didn't exist. I had paid cash for the entire house. The bills they needed help with were for a property they owned free and clear, thanks to me. Now, they wanted half my retirement income for the privilege of staying in the home I purchased. They were not struggling, they were monetizing my generosity. They had made a critical miscalculation. I had spent 40 years as a structural engineer, trained to find the invisible forces that cause structures to fail. I knew exactly where to apply pressure. I spent the next week documenting their actions, recording every detail that turned the house back into a cold, rented property. The rules: Leona left a house rules document restricting kitchen access and claiming the living room TV. I noted it in a small spiral notebook: house rules presented. Kitchen access restricted. 7 a.m. The inventory: on Tuesday, Leona photographed the refrigerator for documentation purposes, implying she was measuring my food consumption. Refrigerator, inventory. Said, documentation purposes. The freeze: Douglas set the programmable thermostat to 58 ring operator for my room, telling me to use a blanket. Thermostat control set to 58 ring operator. Quote, use a blanket. The threat: over dinner, Leona suggested I move to a first-floor room, saying my current one would make an excellent office for Douglas, implying they wanted to downsize or exile me. While they were at work, I took preemptive action. New accounts: I opened a new checking and savings account at a different bank and transferred $87,000 from my old account, the amount they knew about, to protect it. Safety deposit box: I rented a safety deposit box and placed all the original house documents, the $340,000 check, closing papers, etc., inside. Legal research: I spent the evening researching Oregon property law and discovered the principle of a constructive trust. This law states that when one person provides funds for a property but the title is in another's name, the court can recognize the funding party's actual ownership. Targeting an attorney: I found an attorney named James Morrison, whose biography mentioned an engineering background before law, specializing in title challenges and ownership conflicts. He would understand the blueprints of their betrayal. On Sunday night, With my notebook full of evidence, the legal statutes written down, and the attorney's name underlined, I prepared for the final step. The next morning, I called James Morrison's office and scheduled an appointment for 2 p.m. Going out, I told Douglas as I put on my jacket. He barely looked up. "Sure, Dad." I left the house, taking the bus downtown. This was no casual business. I was hiring a professional to reclaim what belonged to me. I was ready to apply the necessary pressure to the faulty foundation of their greed. The bus ride ended 3 blocks from the office building on 5th Avenue. I took the slow elevator up 12 floors, feeling the weight of the moment I'd been preparing for all week. James Morrison, mid-50s and professional, met me promptly. In his conference room overlooking the city, I spread my evidence like a battle map. I presented the $340,000 cashier's check with my signature from March 2010, the closing documents, and the deed showing Douglas as the sole title owner. I explained I'd placed the title in his name to help him establish credit, thinking I was being a good father. Morrison meticulously reviewed everything: the check, the title, 15 years of repair receipts, roof, HVAC, kitchen, all paid and documented by me. "What are my chances?" I asked. 60/40ths in your favor, maybe 65/35ths with this documentation, he affirmed. He explained that Oregon courts recognize the constructive trust doctrine for this exact situation, when someone provides purchase funds but title is held by another. I paid the $8,000 retainer from my new, secure bank account. "Asset protection," I explained simply. "Smart," he agreed. He promised to file the petition for the constructive trust next week, Thursday or Friday. Once filed, they'd be served within 48 hours. That evening, I returned home before Douglas and Leona. At dinner, Leona produced another professional spreadsheet. "Your rent increases to $1,500 starting May $text, $1, she announced. She rationalized the 25% increase by showing market reality comparison listings. Douglas just mumbled that bills were rising. I simply stood up. Noted. Downstairs, I heard Leona celebrating her perceived victory. "See? He's reasonable. By next year, we can probably push it to $2,000. He's not going anywhere." "Where would he go?" I made a grim note in my book. Rent increased to $1,500 effective May 1st. Suggests increasing to $2,000 next year. Pattern established, incremental demands, confidence growing, long-term exploitation planned. I spent the next few days gathering crucial corroborating evidence. Neighbor witness, Patricia Henderson wrote and signed a detailed statement confirming that I bought the house for cash, maintained it for 15 years, and that this was always your house. Everyone knew that. This provided the social context the court would need. Official valuation: Michael Torres, a licensed appraiser, valued the house at $520,000, demonstrating the $180,000 equity I created. The final discovery: I searched county property records online and found a catastrophic entry. Douglas had secretly taken out an $80,000 home equity line of credit, HELOC, in March 2024. Worse, there was a notice of default. He was $7,200 delinquent and facing foreclosure within 90 days. The $2,400 monthly HELOC payment exactly matched my full pension amount. I realized their demands weren't just greedy, they were desperate. They had gambled the house I bought, and now they needed me as a lifeboat. I immediately emailed James Morrison the appraisal and the screenshots of the HELOC and foreclosure notice. James filed the petition the next morning. By Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I heard the transactional voice of the process server, followed by Douglas's heavy, panicked footsteps. "What is this?" Douglas burst into my room, pale, clutching the legal papers. Leona was right behind him. "You sued us?" "I filed a petition for constructive trust, yes." I calmly returned to my book. "Your attorney can explain the process." They retreated downstairs, their voices confused and scared as they realized the depth of their trouble. By evening, they cornered me in the kitchen. "Dad, Douglas pleaded, "This lawsuit thing, it's getting out of hand. Can't we sit down? Work this out like family." I didn't turn from the stove. "We can't. But our attorneys can." I was no longer a tenant. I was a plaintiff who had just dropped a $520,000 legal bomb on their 90-day foreclosure countdown. "You're really doing this?" Leona's voice had a sharp, hard edge. "Suing your own son?" I finally turned to face them, meeting her eyes directly. "I'm reclaiming property I purchased. The relationship is secondary to the law." Douglas's volume rose, his fists clenching. "Secondary? I'm your family." "Family doesn't charge family 75% of their income for a room they already own," I retorted. "You redefined our relationship. I'm accepting your terms." "Then get out. Leave tonight." Douglas stepped closer. "That's illegal eviction," I stated calmly. "Oregon law requires 30-day written notice minimum, even for family members. Evict me now, and I'll file an additional claim tomorrow." Leona, sensing the trap, grabbed Douglas's arm. "Let's go." As she turned, she spat, "This isn't over." "No," I said. "It's just beginning." Later, I noted the confrontation in my book, May 8th, defendant served with petition. Confrontation attempted in kitchen. Eviction threatened, documented verbally. Their panic is showing. 2 days later, after a routine medical checkup, I returned home. My key wouldn't turn. They had changed the locks. I called the doorbell, and Leona's voice came through a new intercom, "We're not letting you in. You sued us. That's abandonment." I photographed the new lock and every entry point, documenting the lockout. Douglas arrived and blocked the door. "You don't live here anymore. Leave or I call the police." I held up my phone, recording, "For the record, you've changed locks, preventing me from accessing my residence. You're aware this is a legal eviction under Oregon law." He slammed the door. I called James, who was furious. "Judges absolutely hate landlords who do this. It's one of the most serious violations." He immediately filed emergency motions for wrongful eviction and property retrieval. I found temporary shelter at the Sunset Motel, documenting every expense, the business expenses of being wronged. 3 days later, I was served with their counterclaim. They were suing me for $45,000 and 15 years of unpaid rent, supported by a fabricated affidavit from Leona's brother, Robert Henderson. James dismissed it as desperate people making desperate mistakes. The emergency hearing arrived quickly. In the Multnomah County Courthouse, I sat opposite Douglas and Leona, who were attended by a low-cost, shiny-suited attorney. The judge immediately addressed the illegal lockout. James presented the timestamp photos, the audio recording of Douglas's threat, and the motel receipts. The judge ruled swiftly, residential lockout without proper notice is illegal, family or not. She ordered them to provide me access to retrieve my personal belongings within 24 hours. Pay my reasonable temporary housing costs, the motel expenses. Phase 2, Constructive Trust Preliminary Hearing. James presented the evidence for the main claim. The enlarged copy of the $340,000 cashier's check for the property purchase, proving I paid cash. The 15 years of maintenance receipts, roof, HVAC, renovation, totaling over $45,000. Patricia Henderson's notarized neighbor testimony. The defense attorney argued it was a standard family gift. James countered, "You don't charge rent to someone you believe received a gift." The judge noted that point and, due to the documentation and conflicting claims, ordered a forensic examination of all financial records by a court-appointed expert. The expert's report was due in 4 weeks. I left the courthouse, watching Douglas and Leona arguing with their lawyer, a clear sign of the blame, fear, and accusations flying between them. I was back at the motel, my belongings now filling the small space. Everything they had done, the illegal eviction, the frivolous counterclaim, the possible perjury, had only given James more evidence. The wait for the forensic report began, a breath held underwater until the next hearing in 4 weeks. James called mid-afternoon on a Tuesday, his voice carrying an urgent quality. "Sylvester, we have a problem. Douglas put the house on the market." James's voice was sharp with urgency. "He what?" I grabbed my laptop. "Listed for sale 3 days ago. $480,000, below the appraised value for a quick sale." The link arrived in my email. I clicked it, and there it was, photos of the home I'd maintained for 15 years, listed for $520,000 less than the true value. "Can he do that with the case pending?" I asked. "Technically, yes, he's still the title holder. But we can stop it. We need to file an emergency injunction immediately." I rushed to James's office. He explained that if the house sold to an innocent third party, my ability to recover the property would be complicated. We drove straight to the courthouse, filed the emergency motion, and paid the fee. The goal was to freeze the sale because Douglas was clearly trying to liquidate the asset to avoid the judgment. The next morning, the judge scheduled an emergency hearing. The courtroom was smaller, but the tension was immense. The real estate agent was even present, subpoenaed by James. The judge was visibly annoyed when she learned Douglas had listed the property without disclosing the active litigation and the court-ordered forensic analysis. She ruled immediately from the bench, "Property sale is hereby enjoined pending resolution of the constructive trust claim." The injunction was filed, placing an official cloud on the title. The listing was withdrawn by afternoon. James reported that Douglas and Leona were devastated. They had planned to use the sale money to clear their substantial debts. Over the next few days, their financial collapse became painfully obvious. Douglas's BMW was gone, repossessed. Leona's jewelry appeared on Facebook Marketplace. Their shopping shifted entirely to discount brands. A week later, James received the bank's formal foreclosure notice. Douglas was now 5 months behind, $12,000 in arrears, on the $80,000 HELOC. They couldn't sell, couldn't pay, and couldn't afford the legal battle. Their trap had closed on them, not by my design, but by their own financial recklessness. On a Tuesday morning, the forensic examiner's 47-page report arrived. I rushed to James's office and read the key findings. Conclusion: all documentation provided by plaintiff verified as authentic. No evidence of financial contribution by defendant Douglas Bell found. Affidavit fraud: the examiner confirmed that Leona's brother, Robert, was at work in Salem on the dates he claimed to have witnessed payments in Portland, exposing the perjury. At the second hearing, the judge called the examiner to the stand. The expert confirmed that I had unquestionably provided 100% of the purchase funds and subsequent maintenance costs. The judge delivered her preliminary ruling. Plaintiff has established a constructive trust. Plaintiff is the equitable owner of the property. Regarding the illegal lockout, plaintiff is awarded $12,000 in compensatory damages. Douglas was silenced by the ruling. The defense attorney conceded, "You lost on the facts." He advised them to settle, but Leona immediately insisted, "We're not giving up. We'll appeal." 3 weeks later, I returned for the final hearing, knowing it was my last time in the motel room. The judge formalized her ruling. The property is held in constructive trust for Sylvester Bell. Douglas must either execute a quitclaim deed transferring title to me, or pay me $420,000, purchase price, maintenance, damages, and legal fees. We met in a conference room. James presented the final terms. I would take title and pay off the $80,000 bank debt to stop the foreclosure. Douglas and Leona would vacate within 30 days. Their attorney convinced them, "Without this, the bank forecloses in 6 days. This is your best option." Douglas's voice was hollow, "We accept." Over the next week, I moved my possessions back. I wrote the $80,000 check to the bank, and the title company processed the quitclaim deed. On move-out day, Douglas approached me on the porch. "Dad, I should have. I'm sorry it came to this. You demanded my pension, changed the locks, tried to sell what wasn't yours. Pay for your choices. No more words passed between us. I watched as their old sedan drove away. I walked through the house, my door, my house. I made coffee in the kitchen, the one they had itemized, and sat on the back porch. The quiet ownership was complete. 4 months of strategic patience and the law had delivered restoration. I was home. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right. Thank you for watching.